Welcome to our bonus book club, Daughters of Eve by Lois Duncan. Ooh, I've got a creepy cover with a bloody candle. Yeah, this is a really interesting read. I've never read it before. I can't wait to hear what everyone thinks and have a really good chat about this book. In fact, I don't know whether we're going to get everything in within the hour, but we'll see. Right, I'll just add my guests in. I have got a fan on because it's just so warm here in the UK, so if you can hear it and it's getting on your nerves, just let me know and I will turn it off. Right, let's add Sharron in. I just saw Sharron pop up. Hi Heather. Hi Ed. Right, who we need to add in? Kelly. Hi Sharron.
Hello!
Hello. You all right?
I am in it warm. Oh my god.
Oh no, it's so hot. Hi Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
I've got my fan on as well, Shelley, so
I'm like,
lots of background
honestly,
noise.
oh, I'm melting. We need it though. Like, just I can't deal with the heat.
I've got all my
Like,
curtains shut.
oh.
I'm like in a cave in here.
Oh dear, yeah. I have got the blind open in front of me. So hi
Hi,
April.
April.
Hiya.
Hi!
Hi. Oh yeah, so I was just saying I have got the blind open in front of me with a little window open just to give me a bit of air. We're having a heat wave in the UK, April. It's very warm.
Oh, I have a fan going too. So yeah, I'm with
Oh,
you.
oh dear, so hot. Oh, but yeah, the bonus book club babes. That's what we're called. Yay! Or even maybe the Daughters of Eve, our own little secret society.
Yeah.
Daughters of Shelley.
Daughters of 𝐓𝐚𝐠𝐥𝐤. Oh, bless you. Oh dear. So yeah, so we're going to be chatting about Daughters of Eve by Lois Duncan, which was suggested by the lovely April as a bonus book club, and I'm so pleased that you suggested it. And I'm so happy that I've read this book. Honestly, it was
Oh,
really. I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but I loved
yeah,
it.
I
You're
knew
getting
you
straight to the
would.
review part.
Yeah, that's it. I'm like, loved
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Oh, but yeah, if you don't know, joining us is the wonderful Sharron of Sharron Joy Reads, the wonderful Kelly. Kelly couldn't help but wonder, and the wonderful April 80s and 90s book art. So yeah, we're going to be chatting, and Melina was going to join us, but she's not feeling very well, so we're sending lots of hugs to Melina and
Yeah.
yeah. So hi Marissa. So yeah, Lois Duncan is an acclaimed suspense author for young adults. So she was published I think she published nearly 50 books or something like that in her lifetime, including I Know What You Did Last Summer, which we all know was made into a brilliant film. The book's quite different from what I remember. But yeah, and then obviously other ones that we've read, like Stranger with My Face, which we read last year, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah,
Wow,
I think
that's
so.
gone
Yeah.
quick. And Down a Dark Hall, which we also
My
read.
favourite.
So
Oh yeah, that was
good.
I really loved Down a Dark Hall. It was brilliant. Yeah, and yeah, a bit of astral projection in The Stranger with My Face as well, which always intrigued me when I was younger. And just by pure coincidence, and I didn't plan this at all, but it's actually the anniversary of Lois Duncan's death today.
Oh,
So she
gosh.
died on
Oh,
she died on the 15th of June 2016 due to a long battle with cancer, I believe, at the age of 82. And then,
wow.
so when I was looking up a little bit about her, I was like, oh, I didn't plan like that it was going to be on the same day. So I was
Yeah.
like, it was meant to be that we was meant to do the chat today, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Oh dear. Lisa said, haven't read this one before. I sold it possibly to Kelly and forgot to listen to the Teen Creeps episode in advance. There might be spoilers ahead coming up. Well, there will definitely be spoilers. Matthew said, fantastic suggestion, April. We haven't done one quite like this one. It was a fantastic read.
It's different.
Yeah. Larissa said, love you, April. Yeah, and Larissa said both of these are so good. Definitely in Larissa's top 5. I completely agree with that. So Daughters of Eve was originally published in 1979, and we did get a revised edition, I believe, 2011, which Sharon's read. So Sharon's read the revised edition, and then we've all read like some form of the original 1979. So hard to get over here in the UK.
Really?
Yeah, it's like really, really difficult to get. I wonder whether it was due to it being banned or something. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's really difficult to get over here. So, but I kind of like that Sharon read the reissue, just to get like a little bit, maybe a different perspective. But I believe most of it might have been the same, apart from some name changes and a bit more violence and things like that. So we'll see as we get along. So Daughters of Eve is the girls at, is it Modesta High? Because that's how I was saying it in my head.
Yes.
So the girls at Modesta High School feel like they're stuck in some anti-feminist time warp. They're faced with sexism at every turn, and they've had enough. So sponsored by their new art teacher, Miss Stark, they band together to form the Daughters of Eve. It's more than a school club. It's like a secret society and a sisterhood. At first, it seems like they're actually changing the ways that the guys are thinking and treat them, or they're trying. But Miss Stark urges them to take a more vindictive action, and it starts to feel a little bit more like revenge or brutal revenge. But blinded by their oath of loyalty, the Daughters of Eve become instruments of vengeance. And can one of them break the spell before real tragedy strikes? Dum dum dum. So there will
No, I forgot about that one.
I was just going to say there will be spoilers. And just a little warning that obviously the book covers topics of domestic violence, abortion, sexual conduct, as well as like feminism, anti-feminism, so many different themes. So we will be probably chatting about those. So if any of those are triggers for anyone, it might not be the chat for you. So, but it is a good book, I promise. So yeah, right.
And I did have to write down the names of because there were so many characters.
Oh,
and
so
I
many.
And I think 2 of them, I lost track of them. I don't know what happened to them. One of them died in a car accident, I think.
Yeah,
but
I was like, wait, who was Holly?
Yeah. So, but the main characters, I think, which is the core 8 of them, I think 2 of them are kind of add-ons. I wanted to know what happens.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Kelly? Have you read it before?
Not that I can remember. So it didn't ring any bells. And as soon as you announced it, I hopped onto Vinted, and actually somebody was selling a copy. So I immediately snapped it up straight away. And then I saw you starting to post saying that people couldn't get copies. So I'm glad I got the copy I did. I think mine is the 1979 one as well, because it doesn't say, it's just first published in, and then the date, it does say Lois Duncan's 1979. So I don't know. Anyway, it's an old copy. But no, I don't think I'd read it before, but and it didn't ring any bells when I read it. Obviously, I was originally planned for the talk, so I sped through it last Sunday, and I read it. I read it in one afternoon. But because I wasn't planning on being on the talk, I didn't make notes on names, and even though it's only been 1 week, it's really hard to remember who is who. And what I thought was really interesting is how the author herself seems to appreciate from beginning to end how hard it will be to keep track of these 10 different people, because she used their surname every single time to name the character. And then I'm like, I remember getting halfway and going, who's this again? And flicking back to go, who's this? Oh, right, she's that one. Okay. And I think, you know, we sometimes say about point horror books that they spend a long time describing what the girls look like. And I think there was like initial descriptions, but not enough for it to ever stick in my head.
No.
So every
Yeah.
time it was another girl, I'm like, is this the one with the dad who walked out, or is this the one who's you know, got a boyfriend who wants to set, you know? And it was just,
Yeah.
I feel useless for tonight because I've only read it a
No.
week ago and I can't remember who's who.
Well, I've had to write a list of all the names in front of
I've
me,
got a
so that's
list.
the only
I think
reason why I remember them.
the ones I particularly remember, I think I've got Fran,
Yeah.
Anne, Bambi, and possibly Kelly fixed in my
Yeah.
head. And I think after that, I'm going to have to follow your lead. So don't ask me the question first, because I'm going to have other people remind me what we're talking about.
And they're
Yeah.
different names to me.
Yeah. So just to make matters worse, so I think Teddy's read the 2011 version. Hi, Claire. And Matthew said, I'm interested to hear what they changed in the 2011 edition. So one of them was the names.
3.
So, yeah, so I think, oh, yes, sorry. So Fran was Erica in the new version.
Okay.
Bambi was Madison in the new version. And Ruth.
Bambi.
Bambi's such a good name.
Well,
Such a
Pete
good
called her
name.
Bam Bam, didn't he?
Bam Bam.
Yeah, so what was Madison then called?
It was
Madman.
called Mad.
Madman.
It was called
Mads.
Mads. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you've got Ruth, who was changed to Kirsty. Christy. Oh,
Yeah.
I've written it
This is
down
going to
wrong.
get
Christy.
confusing.
Yeah. So I'll try my best when we're talking. I'll try and like say, oh yeah, that's so and so.
Yeah.
I've written down the names that were changed. Also, if you want to use the names in your books, I know what you're talking about.
Oh, thanks,
You can
Sharon.
translate for everyone else.
Yeah, we'll try. And obviously this was a reread for you, wasn't it, April? So what made you suggest it for the book club to read?
Oh gosh, I read this way too young. I was probably a preteen when I read this, which was like way too young to be reading about these kind of topics. I vividly remember like this particular cover and staring at it and being like, oh my God. And she's like ripping up this picture, I'm guessing of Peter, you know, and like the look on her face. And I just couldn't believe it. And then over the years, I've reread it. And I feel like I find something different in it each time that I've read it, you know, something that I see things differently now as a 42-year-old as I, you know, than I did at 11 or something.
Yeah,
So,
that's so true. Oh, I loved it. I'm so glad you suggested it.
Yeah.
And I know in the back of this updated version, I'm sure there's like an interview with Lois Duncan, and I'm sure the interviewer asks about, you know, there's a lot of characters and I can't find it now. But I'm sure she says like, yeah, she had to put a lot of characters in because of, you know, a society would have a lot of members in, but then she tried to like just focus on a few to give them more of a story arc than all of them. Just to try and, you know, stop getting confused. It was something like that anyway that she wrote, but yeah, there was a lot. And it was hard to keep track, and I'm not surprised that we've all like got the names muddled up, to be honest.
Because it wasn't just them, it was the fact that the parents were quite present in a lot of
Yeah.
and then there was brothers and teachers, so like the names, it was like if you wrote down the whole cast of characters, there was a lot in the amount of words that there were, which isn't a criticism, but it does mean that even it's been a week, I can't necessarily I need to draw one of those maps like in murder documentaries, you know, well, this is this person who did this to this person and they're related to this one because of this reason.
Sometimes like when I'm making notes for like when we're doing the point horrors, if there's a lot of characters, I do like a little spider diagram just so I remember for the chat, so it's useful.
I do for everyone I read, just because it helps my reviews when I'm reviewing. So I make like you know, like a family tree almost of where everybody is.
Yeah, that's it. But did you like the elements of that the families were more prominent and, you know, the brothers were prominent? April?
Yeah, I really thought that it was important because it was almost showing how these issues were going to affect the women in the future. You know, like these were the issues years later. This is how it's affecting, you know, the mothers and everything like that. And I feel like the girls could kind of look at them and see themselves in the future of what could be, you know, if these things continued.
Yeah. Did you like the presence of the families, Sharon, in the book?
Yeah, I did. I think getting a more rounded view of what you were seeing.
Yeah.
And also it does that kind of generational thing of, you know, the girls only really expecting to end up the way their mothers ended up and their mothers ended up, and that kind of generational thing in a small town. So I gave a much more. It's also fed into the personalities of the girls, and when the girls do turn,
straight away it's going to be evil and manipulation and I don't know, demonic rituals.
That's what I
or
thought
something,
going into it. Yeah.
the new one
it
is
wasn't
more.
quite like that.
The new one is more.
Oh, it is.
It's far more violent and far more twisted.
Okay. But I'm quite keen to actually read that then, see what a more modern take would be. But I like the fact that it was a bit of a slow burn on that, so it felt like it wasn't just somebody brainwashing them. It was, at least in the beginning, we'll obviously get into this, but in the beginning it felt more like it was a mirror being held up to them and actually asking them to look at things and actually what is really there, and then using that against the girls, I guess, you know, as transpired. But it became believable because each of them had something where it was, you know, the expectations or the fact that, you know, somebody had walked out on their mother or somebody was violent to their mother. And there you could see why they snapped or why they decided, you know what, no more. So it definitely made it more believable, the fact that you knew much more about each of the families. Particularly, I can't remember the one who had the violent dad.
Jane.
Jane.
And the one whose brother was Pete, and
Niles.
Niles.
Pete and the other one.
Pete and Niles. We'll have a little
they're
chat
not names
about
that
them.
go together, are they?
No,
Pete,
not really.
Niles and Fran. I'm really glad they didn't have names that were similar, because we've read ones before where they had like characters with like the same letter for their name.
Yeah.
And that was confusing. So I'm glad that all the names are quite distinct.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Claire said she read the 2011 version as well, couldn't find the older one. Yeah, so hard over here. Larissa said, when I read updated versions, they're not normally too different, almost not worth updating. Yeah, I think it's just like subtle changes sometimes, isn't it? But yeah.
I can't see the chat. The last one I've got is Larissa saying that she possibly sold the book to me. So apologies, I'm really leaning on you guys here.
That's okay. Matthew said they put that we were freezing, but I presume it's okay now.
I'm certainly not freezing.
No. Matthew's put there are typos in my edition, and for a page or two, Fran became Frank during one of the meetings. That made it even more confusing for a minute. Oh wow!
Who's Frank?
Claire said I had to restart it. I presume the book. I was clearly skim reading it as I was 2 chapters in before I realised it was from different character viewpoints. So I had to go back and reread it. Yeah. Someone's put, I was obsessed with point horror. Oh, thank you. Matthew said, I always make a list on an index card of the characters and notes for every book I read now. It makes it so much easier. That's what I do. Quite often I like talking to my phone, like if I'm reading, I'm like, Paul, he is a dick. Or something like that. Just so I know, like, then I look
You got
back
all these
and I'm like,
random clips on your phone.
yeah, that's it. Like, if my husband opens it up, he's like, whoa, she's got a hit list here.
That could be use as
Oh,
evidence against you one day, you know.
I know, exactly. Yeah, Claire said my coffee has a fab interview with Lois Duncan at the end, which I really found interesting, especially talking about the power of suggestion and why she doesn't get too graphic in her writing. Yeah. The next one you're doing is the surfer. Someone's asked. So I'm doing the fever at the end of this month, and then the surfer next month for Point Horror. So Matthew's put those brothers. If I'd been Ruth, they'd be around glass in their food for sure.
Oh
So
my God.
I wasn't going to bring them up until a little bit later on, but while we're talking about them, we might as well just get them out of the way. So Peter and Niles, let's chat just quickly about them. What were your thoughts, and did Peter deserve what he got? April?
Well, they're disgusting, obviously. I mean, the both of them are just horrible. And I think that, like, because their dad is, they both have grown up in this patriarchal, viewpoint. Their dad's exactly the same way. So they're like very much leaning into all of that,
Yeah.
and somebody had said that they thought they liked that that Lois Duncan had given him his own kind of narration towards the end there. And
That
I
was
thought that was pretty
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, I thought that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And I
They're
thought
just
that was
horrible.
at that point, especially, like, I thought it was quite. I was like, whoa, like Lois Duncan has pushed the boundary there of giving me his point of view to try and make me care. But at that
Yeah.
point, I was too far gone. I just didn't
Yeah.
care about him. I was like, give him what he deserves.
But I do think, like, I was totally rooting them on for what they did to him in the original book. Now, I don't know about the updated version, like how far they took that. It seems like I kind of skimmed through the updated version to see, and it looks like they did take it a little bit further into that territory. But yeah, in the old version, them just, shaving his head was pretty great.
Yeah. Because they were kind of like, in the original, they were kind of like choking him a little bit, but then that seemed to stop, and then they were just like shaving his hair off. And then obviously we get that later scene where, like, Niles is like, you don't understand, Mom, his hair is his, like, identity. Yeah. I'm like,
everything.
whoa.
No,
Oh,
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
It was great. And I think kind of showed how things started to be kind of, banal. They shaved his head, and then it just started to, like, escalate a little bit from there in the next things that they did.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Sharon? What did you think of Peter and Niles, and how bad was it in your book, that scene?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they both needed slapping, didn't they? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, it was but they were only doing what they'd seen. They were only copying what they'd seen. And so in a way, it's not their fault in a way. They're only doing what they're seeing their dad doing.
Yeah.
But the mess in the kitchen, oh my God, the mess every time all of them were there.
Yeah.
I just, like, oh my Lord. In my coffee, they virtually strangle him. They shave every part of his body, every hair from his body, and they carve into the back of his head a very bad word, which I can't say on this.
What does it rhyme with?
Wow.
It's
Wow.
it rhymes with mutt.
Oh.
They carve it into the back of his head, on his bald head.
Wow.
Dang.
But then that makes, in the updated version, that makes the whole not going to school thing much more believable. In that instant, then. Oh,
and
wow.
He's traumatized. He's actually traumatized in
You definitely would be, definitely, from that. Oh, she really upped the ante on that one then.
So it was a lot more violent from the start.
Yeah.
I think perhaps in a way that kind of ruined it in a lot of ways, because they went in full force. Whereas I think in your book it built up a little bit.
Yeah.
So that they didn't,
definitely.
by the time you got to the end scene, which we'll get to, there was it kind of built up into that point. Whereas mine, they were like full in, straight in.
Wow. Okay. So interesting that she chose that route in the updated version, just to go full you know, more
If she,
violent, really.
Shelley, if you
Mm.
read the interview at the back, it does say there are a lot of the changes she doesn't sound like she was happy with.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
the changes they made to Irene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they turned her into quite almost like a
Yeah.
feminazi. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
turned her
Yeah.
into such an extreme feminist that
Uh,
she became a caricature. Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Wow.
wow. Okay. And I'm so engrossed, I forgot what I was asking, but I think it was about Peter, wasn't it? So Kelly,
Yeah.
what did you think about Peter and
He
Niles?
felt very fairly generic in like compared to things like Point Horror and stuff. That he's the
Mm,
good-looking, popular, has a car, always has a steady girlfriend.
yeah.
People look at him and swoon across the corridors and that kind of thing. And I thought, I thought they were fine, the two of them. It was interesting to kind of see the older brother and the slightly younger brother and the differences between them. That Niles, I gather, was still good looking, but was just a little bit in his brother's shadow,
Mm,
or something along those lines. It's kind of what I picked up because he wasn't the main focus. And he seemed harmless and enough until obviously what happened later on, when he goes
yeah.
to insert girl's name.
Laura.
Goes
Laura.
to
Laura.
Laura's, yeah,
Laura's
Laura's
house. Yes, I'm good for
house.
Laura.
Oh, that
I swear I said
scene,
it 2 weeks
like,
ago.
oh, that
Yeah.
scene
So
really,
I just
obviously the wedding
wanted
like,
came
to
to
hug
pass.
her.
It was it was
yeah.
terrible what he did, and I think, but I did really like what you said, Shelley, when you said about how we heard Peter's
Mm,
perspective, because I think that was the whole. It was the turning point that we'd only just turned to the girls doing things that were more like revenge as opposed to just
yeah.
discussing or supporting each other or challenging things.
Mm,
And I think that was when it turned and going, well, actually, they've just done this. And you might have been kind of going, yeah, good, he got his just desserts. And
mm,
then go, actually, no, there's a different perspective to this story. And
yeah.
straight away, I think it gave you that focus that for everything else that happened, you're thinking, well, actually, their actions aren't justified. And you might have gone
Mm,
along with it, maybe not in the more up to date version, but you might have gone, okay, well, that they taught him a lesson, and the next one, okay, that was just just deserved as well. But I
yeah.
think the fact they showed Peter's perspective and actually things weren't quite as they were presented to
Yeah.
us, it
I
immediately
just,
made you think, go, oh, okay, well, not
yeah.
not everyone is as bad as you think, and not everyone is as good as you think.
Well,
Yeah.
it's almost too like men are also victims of patriarchy,
Mm,
And I think that's kind of maybe, I don't know what message she necessarily was trying to say, but that's
Mm.
kind of what I got. They've grown up into this world. Everyone around them, the dad is saying, "Oh, Ruth, you have to clean up after
mm,
the boys and do
mm,
all this stuff," and they're just like that. They take that on, and that makes them victims of that as well. I feel
yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's why I don't know what it was just so poignant for me just to have that point of view, like, and how that she did it, and just almost like just to give him a bit of humanity, or
Yeah,
like a bit of just in
yeah.
that moment before, that happens to him. And
Hmm.
I was just like, oh wow, like I appreciated it in a weird kind of
Yeah,
way,
Yeah.
even though I didn't
yeah,
like him very much.
absolutely.
um so, who was your favourite character or story arc? Obviously, Kelly, don't worry if you don't remember the names at all. But yeah, who was your
Hang
favourite
on.
like character? Kelly, should we come back to you?
No, no, sorry.
Tell
I
Okay.
could just say Kelly, couldn't I? Because there was somebody with my name,
Yeah,
I love
yes.
that.
what the story. Tell me what the arc is, Don, and I'll tell you their name.
Yeah.
I did really like Laura.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
really, because she's a centre point, really, isn't she? In terms of she has the most that happens to her, perhaps, and
Mm,
and she's the catalyst in some ways for some of the things that happen. Um, I liked Ruth and how she stood up because I think she had a great platform to stand up to
mm,
her
yeah.
brothers and ask, like, I'm only asking for one afternoon.
Yeah.
And she was somebody who I thought just been quite reasonable.
Mm,
Like, she was asking for something reasonable. She challenged, and she ended up sort of being successful in that way. Was she the one who stood up to Irene at the end?
Um,
Who's the one who stood up to Irene? Who goes there, and or was that
I think
Fran?
I think
it's Fran,
Fran.
isn't it?
I,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I
Or
Yeah.
quite like
slash
Fran as
Fran
well.
slash Erica
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
in the new
Yep.
version.
yeah. Let
Yeah.
the others talk, and if it comes back to me, but I think Fran, Ruth, and Laura were the
Mm,
stronger ones that I linked to. I liked Anne, but I didn't
mm,
relate to her. But I thought it was really interesting to have somebody who's got a traditional perspective.
yeah.
And she's like, okay, this is my options, but I'm actually quite happy with those options, if
Mm,
that's what it is.
Yeah.
I didn't feel
yeah.
necessarily she was somebody being like a square peg being forced into a round hole. And
Yeah.
when you kind of find out, it would be interesting because we could talk about what happened to them at the end. We heard where were they now a few years later,
Yeah.
and she
Yeah.
was exactly where she expected herself to
Yeah.
be. And I guess we can discuss whether we felt that was a disappointment or whether that was
Right.
Yeah.
okay. Well, if that was her choice, that was her choice. But anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, how about
I
oh,
dropped it.
oh.
I got so excited there. Didn't
Oh, how about you, Sharon? Did you have a favourite like character or story arc, or one that a character you related to the most?
I really loved Erica or Fran
Fran,
was
yeah.
my favourite character. And that's one of most like me when I was younger,
Oh, I
right?
love that.
Not particularly of the science part. I was a nerd,
Yeah,
and but you know, I was a head librarian, head girl, all that
yeah.
kind of stuff. And so I relate to her the most, although not the
Oh,
animal experimentation. Never did.
no.
Uh,
Yeah.
my favourite
Mm.
story arc was Annie, Gentle Annie. Loved
Oh,
her. Um,
yeah.
I also really likes the wrong words, but I really enjoyed Jane's arc.
Oh, Jane, yeah.
With a violent father, just
Mm.
Yeah.
I thought that was done really well.
Yeah.
Actually, time. I don't know how much of that was changed in the later one, but I
Mm.
thought the explanation of DV and how he's hidden was really well
Yeah.
done. And having experienced that in my life, I thought that was really well
Mm.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
You know,
definitely.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I loved Madison, Bambi.
Yep.
Bambi.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
loved her because she was
Yeah.
ballsy.
She
I
was.
loved her.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I thought they all had the only two. As I say, Paula, who was the
Yeah.
basketball girl.
Don't really know much about her.
I don't know what happens to her. I don't care. Holly, I don't even remember her. All I know is she died in a car accident.
Yeah. She was named after the wreath on the door at Christmas. That's all
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
Um,
remember.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't. I liked all. I thought all of them had an interesting
Mm.
story to tell.
Yeah.
I thought Kelly's was fascinating. You know
Mm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
The trauma of a divorced child,
Yeah.
a divorced family,
Mm-hmm.
the way she played that out, I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
they all were interesting. But yeah, Erica or Fran to you
Yeah.
would have been the most like me, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. How about you, April? Who was your favourite character or arc, or who do you relate to the most in the book?
I mean, I also loved Bambi Madison because I
Yeah.
felt like, she was kind of showcased as like the typical like popular
Mm.
girl, but she wasn't a mean girl at all.
No.
Like
But then,
right when everything happened with Peter and Laura, she immediately took Laura's side and was like, "Oh, Peter sucks." Like,
Yeah.
we gotta do something about this. And I just
Yeah.
thought that was really cool because she could have easily been, angry at Laura for being with him and everything like that, but she
Mm.
wasn't. She was just immediately on her side and supporting her.
Mm.
And yeah, I loved Anne and I loved Laura.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give Laura a hug so
Yeah.
much. I mean, just everything that she went through. And I also really loved Anne's family. Her
Mm.
dad,
Yeah.
I really loved him. I loved the whole
Oh,
scene
oh,
at the
that
end where
scene. Oh,
he's
yeah.
talking about abortion to her and he's just so kind and he's just like, this is a choice you have to make. And I just love that so much because
Mm.
it was just showing that, like, you know, there are good men.
Yeah.
There are good men in this story. They're not all
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that. That scene at the end with her dad, like knowing that Anne's pregnant, and it was such a touching scene. I had a little tear in my eye. I was like,
I did
it's
too.
so sweet.
It was
Oh, it
beautiful.
was such a lovely scene.
Yeah.
Lovely. But yeah, I think for me, I think I related more to Laura. I was always a big child, so I felt kind of like what she was feeling a lot of the time. And unfortunately, I could relate to some of her storyline with a boy from back in the day. Who was just used me basically. So I could relate to her like more, her story. But my favourite, Anne and Dave and the whole baby storyline and the family. Oh, my little heart.
Yeah.
Nobody's mentioned Tammy and her feelings.
Oh, she.
Oh yeah, Tammy,
You know,
we
it's all she's her
forgot.
feelings. It's just Tammy and her feelings again.
She was boring though, wasn't she? She was boring. Oh, there's blood. Candles bleeding.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get that whole thing, and it didn't necessarily, well, at least not the older version, it didn't translate into anything later.
No.
Just that she had a sinister feeling. But
Yeah.
I quite liked her for the short time that we had with her.
Yeah.
And it was just the fact that it was like going, oh, she's got her feelings again.
Yeah.
And I'm
I
like,
think
no,
even the
just get her
parents
feelings.
are over it, aren't they? The parents go, oh, stop going into them feelings at some point. But I think that's, for me, like at the beginning, her with the candle and the blood, that's what made me think, oh, there's going to be something like
Witchcraft.
really
Yeah.
like,
I thought it was witchy.
witchcrafty
Yeah.
or something like that. It really did give me that vibe. So, and then like when that didn't play out, I was like,
I thought it was going to be like The Craft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's there's
Like
an
even my
X-Files
book
episode.
covers got the
Yeah.
candle with the blood,
Yeah,
so I was
yeah.
like, "Ooh!"
And there's like an X-Files episode that's about a school, and it's actually the teachers, not the students, but it's where they have this secret society and they're doing something. So I thought, I know it's written in the late 70s, but I thought it was going to be very 80s, 90s teen witchcrafty something. You know, making little voodoo dolls and putting people's faces on it or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so the back of this book does not really describe the book at all.
No.
But it's not a bad thing. I'd like the book I thought it was going to be written.
Yeah.
And then with this one, I would have liked maybe a couple more chapters because not as many things happened with the society, I felt.
Yeah.
So I loved it, but I was like, I wanted more of them being daughters of Eve.
Yes.
And see how that was going to go.
Yeah.
And then I'd also like to read the book about, you know, this dominated by leadership, bound by loyalty, tragedy strikes. I would have liked a little bit more of a Point Horry type version of it.
More of that. Yeah, definitely.
Another one for us to write.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have all these ideas after these chats we do. Claire's put the brothers were awful, but I did like how Lois gave Peter a narrative, like we said. Matthew said, poor Jane. I'd have given Bart crushed glass too. Yeah. Heather said the brother's angry face. Heather also put Shelley laughy face, so I don't know what I did. I think I got a bit behind.
I can't see any comments.
It's probably talking into my phone, that probably was. That happens to me sometimes, Kelly. If I'm a guest, if Josh is hosting and I'm guest, my comments freeze and I can never see them.
Yeah, I can't see anything, so sorry guys.
Matthew said, I don't understand why the brothers couldn't do for themselves. I was a boy and I started cooking and baking when I was 8 or 9. Yeah. Exactly. But as you say, that's how they've been nurtured, how they've been brought up, isn't it? You know, they don't have to
where you were born.
anything.
I was in 1979. I was 10.
Yeah.
So this is actually these girls are only a couple of years older than I was at that age. I lived in a very small place, and it was exactly like that.
Oh wow! Yeah.
You know what I mean? The girls looked after the home. and the boys
Yeah.
went and did what they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I had no brothers, so I had two sisters, so it was different. But you know, just the way it was. You know.
Yeah. Oh wow, yeah. Because you've got to kind of remember this book was written in 1979. Things were
Very.
different.
Mm-hmm.
Not even though like now we're saying like we wish well we'll get into it, but some of the themes we wish were more different now.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. But Claire said I found the timescale of the book a bit confusing. They started preparing for the end of term, and then it felt like a time lapse.
Yeah.
But then Peter was still hiding in his room with no hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the timings were out badly.
Yeah. Larissa said she thought they would tame it down for the update. So obviously that whole Peter scene, wow, I really like.
And the other scenes, all the violent scenes are worse in ways, isn't it?
Yeah. Matthew said yes, the Irene in the 79 version was much more subtle in her approach.
She's not.
So what did you think of Irene Stark then? So obviously she is like the girls come under the influence of her a little bit. She's quite charismatic. She like preaches kind of the gospel of like women's liberation. And she kind of convinces the girls and that their mothers have been oppressed kind of, and that the men in their lives are not, you know, not good people. Kind of pushes them to like settle the score. And then obviously as we go on, it gets more and more and more intense. So what did you think of her, April?
Yeah, I thought that she, towards the end, especially when she was talking to Anne about getting an abortion and stuff like that, I feel like she was trying to control her. She was becoming what she hated and what she was rallying against, you know, because she became more and more extreme and wanted things done her way. She was also like a really hurt person. I feel like she was kind of morally gray, you know, because there were a lot of points that she was making that was right, you know. But yeah, it just started to, I think she took her own hurt that she was dealing with and then was trying to control the girls with that, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like her line wasn't like a straight line, was it? She was very like up here, then back to grey, then like back. It was like all higgledy-piggledy all over the place, but putting her own personal views across as well, like you say. Yeah, because she was interesting.
So much was talked about her background and all the slights and, you know, things that she had gone through, and it was almost like she had gone through almost everything that the girls were currently going through. I mean, I thought it was so horrifying and awful when she was talking about her childhood and like how her parents were like, oh well, she's never gonna find a husband, you know, because she's so unattractive. And then she was just like, oh well, I'm just gonna kill myself. And it was just like, oh my god, like just horrifying, those things that she was dealing with. So it's like I definitely have empathy for her as a person for all that stuff, you know.
I feel exactly the same as you about her. How about you, Sharon? What did you think of Irene? Obviously she was more extreme in your version.
She was a deeply traumatized, bitter woman, wasn't she? And also slightly unstable, I'd hasten to add, I think. And what she did is exactly what you said, April, is she forced her beliefs in the end onto those girls. She didn't give them a choice. And so which is where the problem is with feminists seeing this as very anti-feminist. The whole point of feminism is that you have a choice. So if you choose not to get married and have children, that's fine. If you choose to be a housewife, that's your choice. That's feminism. And she took it and twisted it so much. I don't know what it was like in yours, but that conversation she had with Anne about the abortion, she was threatening. I mean, really quite threatening in that conversation after the book.
Right.
You know, she was, you don't do this, we will do this to you. She was very
that wasn't like
no. So it's more extreme in the
that's
updated.
what I'm saying. I think the changes in the updated book made a caricature of an extreme feminist, when really
Wow.
incredibly damaged, traumatized woman who had spent a
Wow.
lot of time being rejected by everyone around her, and it had made her mentally unstable.
Yeah.
So it turned her into a kind of quite an evil character afterwards.
Yeah, because I feel in the 1979 version that she was more like she was pushy in that moment with Anne, but not like
Right.
it did come she was trying to put her view, her stance, her thought process into Anne, and then Anne kind of does come around to the idea like a little bit. She
Threatened.
kind of brainwashes
She
her
threatens
a little bit.
her dad in my version. She says, if you don't do
Oh,
something, that must to your dad, or hints at that.
oh,
Very
Right.
threatening. Yeah.
right, yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
they up the ante there as well, definitely.
Well, that makes sense. Now I understand the varying Goodreads reviews,
Yeah.
because it's like if you've read this different version, you're gonna
Yeah,
have a different feeling
Yeah.
than reading
Yeah.
the older
yeah,
version. That's like a
yeah.
different book.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's why I said, because me and Sharon had a chat, and she's like, "Oh, should I read the old version?" And I was like, "No, carry on,
Yeah,
read the new
I'm so
version, because it was
glad.
so
Yeah,
interesting to see like how different it is, and hear different things as well, and different
yeah,
viewpoints and stuff like that. So I'm so glad that you did read the updated version,
yeah.
Sharon. How about you, Kelly? What did you think of Irene?
I think she's really well written until it got towards the end, and particularly speaking to Anne about the abortion,
Mm,
etc. Then she turned into your typical point horror villain who all of a sudden their mask has fallen off and they're slightly psychotic,
yeah,
Yeah.
and no longer making any sense. Whereas
yeah,
the book, they'd actually made quite a lot of sense, or seemed like a normal person. She so her teaching, she had a lot of interesting things to say, and to begin with, which I guess is how coercion and control begins.
mm,
It was presenting stories, or talk about a hypothetical, or asking questions, but
Yeah.
letting other people then fill in the answers or provide their answers, and
mm,
that was part of the learning. So I think she was quite an effective teacher in that respect, that she could have, the Daughters Eve and the concept of it, it
yeah,
was going for a long, long time, and she seemed to create that space where people felt that it didn't matter if you're rich or poor, ugly, or against the high school standards, etc. You had a place there, and you'd all have each other's back, which is really
mm,
lovely.
Yeah.
And of course, she was then challenging them to be more, not just accept what they're given or what they're told, but to be more. If you, and then obviously then became, we actually want you to be X, Y, or Z. So my
yeah.
door just opened by itself, which is absolutely terrifying.
Oh,
I think it's just because
whoa!
the window's open, but it literally just
Irene
flew
Starr,
right open.
she's listening.
That's actually just giving me chills.
I saw your face. She was like,
It's because I thought it was like one of my children coming in, but no, the door is
oh.
just like open. No
Anyone coming
child
out with
there.
a fine skillet, love, you need to duck.
Yes.
Just checking there's no bleeding candles around.
Yeah.
But no, she was really well written, I thought. I think she had some really interesting points to make, stories to share. We then found out that those stories weren't hypotheticals or things she'd read in the news, they were hers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so from that point on, you knew, well, she's actually just got a vendetta, and she's
yeah,
so bitter because of how life has treated her, and it's
mm,
only her version. So this is when Lois told the Peter's other side of the story. That's when I became
mm,
less empathetic with her, because I was saying, well, you have become or are a feminist, and you're saying all
mm,
these things have happened because of patriarchy, because of all these reasons, and
mm,
actually it's confirmation bias. Everything that's happened to you, God, well, it's because it was a man who did it, and then this is
Yeah.
the reason why. And
yeah,
I could understand her thinking, and that she doesn't want the girls to make decisions when they've still got time
Mm-hmm.
in their
mm,
lives and the period they're in to choose a different path, to go to art college, and do things differently, because she wishes that she could.
yeah,
So she's very empathetic and understandable. But I just found in the original book, she lost me when she sounded psychotic when she was talking. It
yeah,
wasn't just, you don't have to have the baby. There are, she wasn't like talking through options. It was like, no, I'm going to take you there. Stay at my house. Don't let this man do it to you. You've got a future waiting. I'm taking you to the clinic. And she just started to sound psychotic, which is where I was like, oh, okay. Her substance kind of waned as it got towards the end. Because for most of it, I was like, I don't know what the problem with her is. It's like she's powerful and she exerts influence. I was going, nah, she's all right.
Especially Dave was such a nice character, Anne's Dave was such a lovely male character. Really empathetic, really caring, really loved her. And and she in the end she turned him into this, he's making you do this, he's tying you down. Well, actually he really loves her and she really loves him at that. She loved him. So that was when
that's so interesting though, because like as Shelley was alluding to and talk about the chat, you could see it both ways. Because I think he genuinely did love her, but then at the same time he was slightly older, he's got responsibilities of the farm, and that whilst he loves Anne and wants to create a space for her, it's still, he's got quite a simplified and traditional way of where he wants their relationship to be. So he's not going to stop her and be moody about it. But I just thought it was so interesting because I was like going, well, maybe he was slightly selfish, but then aren't we all, like
of course,
in those situations?
Of course.
So I didn't villainize him for it, but I was like going, actually, it's just showing that everyone perhaps has selfish intentions.
We're all selfish,
even when you're trying to be pure.
We all want what we want.
Definitely.
And he wanted to settle down and have a wife and children. And at the beginning of this, so did she. So it's only that she starts to think differently. But we were all that way. Do you know what I mean? Not necessarily.
It's like
this is showing the dream of it, I suppose, isn't it?
And like with him as well, like at least he said, you can, not you can go to art school, listen to what I'm saying, but like you can I'll support you if you want to go to art school, but are you going for the right reasons? Because you haven't got this on your own merit, someone has arranged this for you. So I feel like he was like the voice of reason a little bit to her, whether that was for his own selfish reasons or not, it's not clear, but I like to think that he was like supporting but being realistic at the same time.
It was manipulated all in the background, I really think.
Definitely.
Do you know what I mean? So you're not sure what the girls aren't really sure themselves what they're feeling because she's manipulating it. And especially as well when she really gets to just looking at my names, when she really gets to Kelly, when she like obviously she takes her to the dance. Kelly didn't want to go to the dance, she gets to go to the dance, then Kelly's staying at her house, and then I can't remember who it is who turns up to talk to Irene at the end, but then she's like, let me see Kelly, and she's like, no, she's asleep, you're not seeing her. And I'm like, whoa, Tammy. I was like, she really does have that arc of like, she just goes to the extreme. And like that scene, I was like, oh, I really, really felt Kelly was in trouble there. It's portrayed as a female version of Lord of the Flies. It's often termed as that, that if you have enough manipulation and control, you can turn a group of people, not necessarily women, but men or boys or girls, to a feral pack. Mob mentality, which is what she does.
Definitely.
Stargazer's comment is cracking me up. I just don't know how Anne and Dave ended up getting in the mood right after they took Dave's mother away the day she died.
It's so true. Because like
strange thing, darling. Put me on that one. Grief is a strange thing.
I
mean, I lost my husband last year. I haven't fancied having sex with anybody else, but do you know what I mean? It makes you do the crazy stuff, And I think sometimes they obviously just were comforting each other and one led to the other, but it's not the ideal situation. His mum dead in the next room, is it?
It doesn't sound very
because
it's not flowers.
Because that's what I was thinking, like, was she still like there, like when that happened?
Dead in the next room.
Whoa.
And that's a bit psycho then.
Oh Yeah, I was a little bit like, hang on, they haven't mentioned her taking her body away, so you know.
Yeah.
I know.
Whoop, whoop. Oh dear.
Well, hopefully it wasn't in the same bed,
Oh,
so that.
can you imagine? At least there's something stiff in there.
Two things.
I'm going to hell.
You are, but I'm coming with you, Shell. I'm coming with you, mate.
Oh my god.
Oh dear. Yes. We'll gloss over that. Matthew said, poor Laura, that whole being stood up scene was very upsetting on its own. And then Niles was like, hold my beer. I'm really going to make this excruciating for Laura. Yeah.
God.
Oh,
He
God.
was worse than Peter, to me, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he was awful.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
she broke my heart, Laura.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she
Just
did.
wanted to give
Do you
her
think
a hug.
Niles was following Peter's lead?
I
In the
think
sense,
Niles was worse than
I
Peter.
Yeah.
I do
think he
too.
was, but I think it's like Peter's learning from his dad and Niles learning from his brother, and it's almost like they were getting worse.
Yeah.
So like he was seeing what his brother got away with, and he was like, maybe like I took it that Niles probably felt a bit inadequate compared to Peter being the bigger brother. And
Yeah.
so he was like going, well, if he can have some, I can have some.
Yeah.
I think he
You
just
know.
thought it was easy. I think she just thought,
Yeah.
oh, you know, he went with my brother. She must be easy, or
Yeah.
she'll go with anybody.
Yeah.
That's what I got from that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
She should have. That wasn't right.
Yeah. Larissa said Lois Duncan did always explore some really interesting things. And thanks for replying to Larissa as well, Sharon, about when we were talking about the about Niles earlier. Yeah, Larissa said, whilst I haven't read this one, I do know the plot and that people are very, is it feminist or not? And I think that shows it's standing the test of time. So many things are still debated in the same way.
Yeah.
So
He starts feminist and then goes a bit
yeah.
off track.
So one of the questions that I was thinking when I was thinking of questions for the book, I put, obviously, yeah, the book received like criticism from feminists, claiming it to be anti-feminism and offensive to women's rights. So what are your thoughts on that with regards to the book, Sharon?
I think that's right. I did stuff in it with a great kind of premise. The idea that you have a group of women like a sisterhood who support each other and are there for each other and help each other. That's a lovely kind of feminist ideal, right?
Yeah.
You know, being supported by your peers. But it goes completely off track towards the end. Then it becomes a retribution. Then it becomes revenge. Then it becomes actually becoming worse than they're doing some things worse than the hurt them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or perhaps not Jane. I think probably he deserved it. But do you know what I mean? I understand that kind of dynamic. But the rest of them, what they did was far worse than what other people had done to them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It became a retribution thing.
Yeah.
And then then at that point, you're just as bad.
Yeah.
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 The inference is that feminism has destroyed them and that feminism doesn't work. And actually, you know, the way things were at the beginning was probably preferable because they were nice and people weren't getting tortured or attacked in different ways. But yeah, it's I still think it holds up as a feminist book or one that deals with feminist topics. But because Irene was an extreme, and then the girls were coming, some of them from the other end of the spectrum based on their experiences. I think the range of characters we had, it left you as the reader to work out what you did and didn't agree with, as opposed to saying this is exactly what it should be about, is about. But I can understand that if you were a feminist, you might get to the end and think, well, this has made us all sound like we're lunatics or what have you. Whereas for other people, you know, they might think, well, actually, it still has those core values to it. So I think it was very good in not preaching, but allowing the extreme character to preach things to an extreme. But I think most people would look at it and go, that's an extreme, and the happy medium is somewhere in the middle. It's not everything is this way, it's not everything should be that way. It's the shades of grey in the middle. And where do you find yourself?
nuanced, you know, and you also, I think it also raises conversation. We're talking about it.
Yeah,
This book is what,
exactly.
60 years old nearly. We're talking
Yeah.
about this. Do you know, it causes conversation, and that can only be a good thing.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
definitely, 100%. What do you think, April?
I think that it's messy,
Yeah.
and just like life, it's very
Yeah.
realistic in that way, you know. And I think I know I read 𝐓𝐴𝐤 𝐂𝐥𝐿, which is another Lois Duncan book, which is kind of similar, where she's kind of like going against extremism in a way. And I kind of feel like she was showing so many instances of nuance, you know, like the science experiment, you know, where the teacher had a legitimate reason to, you know, not put Fran's science experiment through to
Yeah.
the finals or whatever. And yeah, because of that, there's always nuance, just like Kelly said. There's always gray area. So it's like both. It's anti-feminist and feminist, and all of it in between. Yeah,
It's just
I
good.
really do.
You know, it makes people think.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? It starts off a great way, and actually, the reason it becomes anti-feminist to a lot of feminists is manipulation of Irene, not because of her particularly, becomes that because of her manipulation and her saying a feminist when she's not.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think that like good authors ask
Yeah.
questions, but they don't have the, you know, there's not a like direct message. It's just like, let's ask these questions and let's talk about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
No, that's it. And I think that's what Lois Duncan, like, I kind of read this and I was just like thinking, I was just fascinated, because I was like, this was 1979 when she wrote this, and I was
Brilliant.
like, wow, like she was covering some topics, like really hard hitting topics, you know, things that needed to be discussed, and that, as you mentioned, we're still discussing today. So when I was reading it, I was just so like in awe of Lois Duncan for writing this book back then. But also as well, I liked it. Like, you can read some books and it really does like jam it, you know, down your throat kind of thing. But this was kind of like, I want to say gentle, but it was kind of like, this is what it is. You make up your mind, like you've said, you know, you make up your mind whether you think this is acceptable, not acceptable. It didn't kind of give you that answer for you. That was for you to make up your mind. And I really like that, and I admire that she did that. And I just
led. You didn't feel
you felt led through the
you read
story.
it and you're like, actually, I don't agree with that. Oh, I actually agree with that.
Yeah.
And you find yourself making your own choice about it.
Yeah.
Which is a basic feminist principle.
Yeah.
You don't feel led by it, and that's really clever writing.
That's what I
Mm.
thought. And all I kept thinking in my head was like, wow, this was 1979 and she wrote this book, and I was just like, it's just phenomenal. Like, and that's why I think I connected so much with it as well, because I was like, what a lady to write this in 1979.
Incredible.
Amazing.
And the way that she tackled domestic violence, I thought, was really, really well done. I used to work for a DV shelter, and she really nailed the like cycle of abuse with the like love bombing, and then you know, having to walk on eggshells, and you know, that whole cycle, and the ways that Jane's mom was trying to talk to her about what was happening, and like how, you know, it was difficult for her to leave. I mean, especially during that time period where, you know, she didn't have a job or anything like that. I mean, it was not easy for her to leave.
Oh, definitely not.
Been in the man's name, the house, the car, all the property. It wasn't in women's names in those days. It was rare. She would have had nothing. She would have ended up with nothing, and lost custody of the child probably because of that.
So she's never worked.
No,
you know, and so if you haven't worked, then you've not had any pay or income, and but it's like it's the contribution you made to the family is that you looked after the family in the house so that the husband could work, but it meant that you were then left with nothing if you wanted to walk away, because it wasn't seen as, there wasn't a value you could take away from the relationship. But as you've said a few times, it's the themes aren't that different to today. Of course, there's a lot more equality and so on, but it's still very hard for, you know, that story could read just as well today, that you
Yeah.
could understand people for lots of reasons. They may be
Yeah.
isolated, not have family, they don't have their own bank account. So you could see exactly how somebody would be in that situation, you know, wanting it, you know, let the daughter to grow up in a household with two parents and then maybe think about it. So it's all so believable.
Yeah.
And I found that for all of the themes, that it didn't feel like I was reading 1979.
No.
There wasn't a lot in it that made me think, oh, this is quite a few decades ago.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot that
Yeah.
really made me think this is a very different time period. Like the school felt very similar. You know, the dances and the sports teams and so on. So nothing really felt
Yeah, it
particularly
didn't feel
old.
dated.
No.
Yeah, it
No.
didn't. Yeah.
All of those themes happen now. The toxic masculinity.
We've just got different words for them now.
With
Like,
so
you know,
different
Anne
words.
said love bombing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
yeah.
it. Oh, that's what I mean. Like, I'm just so like, it's made me more in awe of her and her
Yeah.
writing, just because I think I can't explain it. It's just like, wow. Like, that's the only thing I can just like think of to say about it.
Well,
Yeah.
you have to,
It's so hard hitting too. I think one of the lines that got me, or the scene that got me so much, was when Jane's dad was trying to get the Daughters of Eve song out of her mom. Like, she wanted her to sing that song. And then that part where at the end of the chapter, it's basically like, you know, she hears the thud and then her, like, you know, singing that song in like this wavering voice. And I was just like, oh my God, that hit me so much, because it's like, oh, you know, she couldn't have this thing to herself. She couldn't have this like secret, this thing that was just hers. He forced it out of her. And I was so affected. Her writing was so good in that.
Yeah, you go through so many different emotions with the different stories and the arcs. It's just, it is like phenomenal writing, definitely.
big difference is the end. Do you know what Jane does at the end when she, spoilers, and she kills her with, you know,
with the skillets,
and at the end of it, she's in a psychiatric hospital. That's probably the only thing that would be slightly different now, because she had a really good case in a court to say that she had reason to. So she probably wouldn't be in a psychiatric hospital. She could get for therapy, but she'd probably be in an open prison. The big thing, that's a big difference. So in those days, she was obviously insane, so they just locked her away.
Right.
Yeah. But it's like that whole scene at the end, it just, like, it really, like, I was, like, you could feel like it was like a pressure cooker, something was going to happen, definitely. But the way that she wrote that, and then the whole thing hitting him with the skillet, I was like, I think I just sat there for a little while after, before I even like read the last little bit of what they were up to 3 years later, just to like take that in, because it just finishes on that like last bit, and you kind of just,
that was the
you're
last.
just like,
and
it's just the way that she does it, and then you're like, I think I gasped. I was like, like, even though it was like, I felt it coming, but I was still like, and that's it, you know, that's what we get at the end. And I was like, oh wow.
I think they did a disservice to Jane when they talked about her having the twitch. And I read it when I first read it. It was like, it's like her anxiety. You know, she's starting to feel anxious. You know, like some people might see black spots or feel out of breath. And the fact, I think it did a disservice when it said that she's in a hospital, because she said it ends with the left side of her face twitched violently. With her eyes still closed, Jane braced herself and brought the skillet down with all her strength on top of her father's head. And it was almost a bit like Irene. No, I've gone full psycho now. It was almost, I've got this underlying psycho thing about me, and now I've snapped. And I was like, no, actually, it was the anxious, you know, the anxiety brought out by being in this environment, not understanding it when she was younger, and then realizing as she got older what was actually happening and what it meant. And it was her snapping, but from, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore, as opposed to, oh no, it's just a psycho.
Exactly.
Like a lot of point horror books end with, oh no, apparently they're just crazy.
But then also as well, from a point of view like that, he had always done it to the mom, and then that's the turning point that he first does it to her, and she's like,
No.
No, that is it. And I was kind of like in admiration for her in that
Yeah.
way, because she was just like, I'm not like my mom, I'm not tolerating it. Here's your skillet.
Yeah.
But you know, it was powerful, really, really powerful scene.
Because
what
Definitely.
other choice would she have?
Yeah.
Like, what other
Yeah,
choice
no
would
option.
she have?
No.
You know?
Definitely
She
Yeah.
can't
not.
Well, that's what he
Definitely
was
not.
walk
trying
out.
to
She
say
can't
to
walk.
her, wasn't it? That like you can go anywhere and report,
Yeah.
because they're not going to listen to a young girl like you. But I'm
Yeah.
a respected man, and you know, got a career and all this stuff. No one's going to listen to
Yeah.
you.
Right. And he was,
So
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
that's right.
Definitely. I think I got a bit behind, but Claire put, I was hoping for witchcraft. And Larissa said Summer of Fear for the witchcraft. So perhaps we'll do Summer of Fear
I think
next
I've got
for
that one.
Lois Duncan.
Summer of Fear. That sounds good.
Oh, Claire said, I thought there was a lot. I thought there was a lot of scene setting before the real action kicked in. I enjoyed it, but did start to wonder when things were going to start happening. It does take a while for things to start happening, definitely.
Maybe she could have cut out a couple of the characters to help with that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, she could have just
I
had
did
them
like the whole
more background.
spectrum.
Yeah,
But like you said, like Paula and Holly and then we started to hear things like the teachers behind the scenes and the parents,
yeah,
and it was like, no, it needed to either be longer to allow
yeah,
for that to breathe, or maybe just
yeah,
cut a couple of the characters.
yeah, definitely. I think she could have got away with it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Teddy said, I did really like Irene, I have to say. I could get why she was so intense and passionate. In the end, her own trauma made her act slightly questionable when trying to help give advice,
Yeah.
to the daughters. Yeah, that's so true. Claire said, I think Irene crossed the line into villain for me when Tammy went to talk to her and she froze her out and then threatened to hurt her dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Susan, that's your sister Sharon, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm learning now. Said, I think I need to read this book.
Well, I've
Yeah.
got it. Hey, coming down.
Yeah. Larissa said trauma can definitely make people behave horribly. Yeah. Not always, but sometimes. Yeah, definitely. And Larissa said not necessarily intentionally, which is what makes it difficult. That's so true. Matthew said, I'm curious as to what kind of assistant principal Irene is going to make at the
Yeah.
end. So vice principals have the most interaction
With
the students. So what did you think of this 3 years later chapter, for the record, like at the end?
Oh, it's such
I
a
found
tease,
it.
wasn't it? It's such a tease. I was
Yeah,
like, you can't
yeah.
just say that. I need to know more.
But I really, really found it interesting, and it had an impact with the last person mentioned being Irene, being the assistant principal, because I was like, I was
Just gonna
taken back. I'm
continue.
like, right, yeah. So, what did you think, Sharon? What did you think of that 3 years
I'd have
later?
preferred it wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it was interesting to see but I didn't care.
Yeah.
I thought the ending of the last chapter was so powerful
Yeah, it
that
could
they
have
should have
just.
ended there.
Yeah, yeah,
Then everybody would be like, "Oh, I wonder what happened," and none of us know.
yeah.
Then but you know, that would have been far more powerful for me.
Mm,
But it was interesting to see what happened. Obviously, Tammy decided to keep the baby.
yeah.
You know, and Jane got James, and obviously in a psychiatric hospital. Laura got a happy ending. It was
Yeah,
just a bit cheesy. I thought it was a bit
yeah.
cheesy for me.
Bambi, or what was it? Madison is the
Fashion
fashion
model.
model that she wanted to
It
be.
was just a bit cheesy.
Yeah,
It would have been far more impactful to have ended with the
yeah,
skillet coming down.
yeah.
In,
Definitely. Yeah,
in my opinion.
yeah.
But
As I say, I had to have a little like moment after the skillet thing, and then I went into just reading those last 2 pages.
Yeah.
How about you, April? Did you like the glimpse into 3 years later?
I thought it was fine. I
Yeah.
thought it was interesting that Laura named her daughter Mona Irene. So she named her
Oh
after
yeah.
Irene. I thought that was interesting.
She did. I didn't pick that up. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they killed Holly off for no reason.
I have to
do
admit,
you
I was a
remember
bit
her
like,
apart from the
Holly
ring?
who?
Yeah, wait, what?
But
I
then
mean,
I
and
was a
then it
bit
was,
like, that is realistic to life though. If you've got a
yeah,
group of people, you know, that is
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm not saying like people have got to die in an automobile accident, but
Yeah.
it's realistic to life that maybe not everyone
Yeah.
makes it. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
Hmm. I
Mm.
like that
that's what I took
Anne
away
was
from it.
working for her science degree.
Oh
That was really cool.
yeah,
That was really
yeah,
cool
that
that
was
she just
cool
kept
as
going
well.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and because
Yeah, it was
obviously there was a
okay.
big thing in the book about, you know, the men were being pushed more for science rather
Yes.
than the women. So to see that, that was quite nice. I
It was
agree
kind
on
of
that.
like a mixture, right? Some people, some of the characters did go off and do these more, all of them had their choices and they're all mixed, like Anne did decide to have the baby and
Yeah,
marry, but she's also doing like art classes or something. I think that's what it said. She was doing art stuff, and it was just like
yeah.
or maybe that was in the new, I think I read the newer For the Record, and it said she was doing art stuff, but in this one it
It
doesn't.
doesn't.
In the older version it
Oh,
doesn't. Huh.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not a fan of,
Oh.
I don't want to know. I don't need closure. I
Mm.
want that Nerissa's put just like me, she's like an epilogue, and I think Matthew put he likes an epilogue because he likes the closure. I don't. I want and I
Yeah,
don't want to know what's happened because that's half the fun.
yeah,
I
that's
get that.
true.
I get that.
yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah. What do you think, Kelly? Did you like the whole seeing them 3 years
I mean,
later?
I completely get the point that the way it ended was just like, wow. And then
Yeah.
kind of thinking, I wonder what
Mm,
happens next then, because, Irene hasn't been stopped. Jane's done essentially what Irene would have wanted her to do if she was asked to in that situation. Wow. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, where's the sequel? I'd want another one. I'd want to know what happens in the next chapter. But I quite liked it because it made me think of things like Breakfast Club
yeah.
or like
Oh,
Dawson's
yeah.
Creek. It felt very teen, kind of like Where Are They Now?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
felt like it was gonna have. In my head, I had the music "Don't You Forget About Me." I had that
Oh,
song
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
playing in my head when I read it, because it's 3 years later, like you said, Shelley, that where are people, and that sometimes you graduate,
Mm,
but you don't know how short life is.
yeah.
I thought it was because the whole premise was exploring female choices and these
Mm,
girls work out
Yeah.
who they wanted to be and what have you. It's very interesting to see what their decisions were within 3 years after their experience. Some of them
mm,
hinted at, still being under the influence, like with Laura naming after Irene. But that was
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
interesting because she was the one who was a housewife. So
Yeah.
she was a
Yeah.
housewife, but then she named her after
Mm,
Irene, which kind of says, well, I took something from the teachings, but I still chose to be a housewife.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
what, for me, it almost gave you more questions, because it's like, well,
mm,
how
Mm-hmm.
did she turn into being a housewife? Whereas other
yeah.
people, they were something different. So I like the fact it was representing lots of different choices, some maybe that you
Mm,
didn't expect.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
I thought that
definitely.
I thought that was just interesting because it kind of it didn't have to spell it out to say feminism is your choice, is about choice. It could have
Mm,
did
Yes.
it by going, here's the 10 girls and what happened to them, and
this
they
is
all
what
made
they're
their
up
Mm-hmm.
to.
choices. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Heather said, Shelley, I'm putting a pin on your thought for some future YA books you haven't read. Oh, okay. um, Matthew said, it seems like when it started, Irene was giving guidance, and at the end, she was working on her own
Yeah.
agenda.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Narissa said, obviously, Narissa hasn't read it, but I do feel that a blanket statement saying it's insulting to women's rights isn't great, as one can speak for themselves, but not for all.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
And Narissa said, I'm sure Lois Duncan's intention was to open discussions, which, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to cram all this into a 1 hour chat, and we've clearly gone over because there's just so much to discuss, which is amazing. Like, as we said, like a book from 1979, we're talking about it now, and it's still so
Yeah.
relevant.
Did you want me to
But
tell you
yeah,
a couple of the are really funny in the book? Like, they updated it in the 2011,
yeah,
and they updated some of it. So for a start, they changed communist to terrorist, right?
oh
But the
yes,
one that made me laugh was, you know, when Pete's trying to get Madison back, and everyone's like, "How have you got her back? How have you got her back?" And he says, and I quote,
oh,
"Girls are like Google. Enter the right criteria, press click, and you get what you want."
Oh
Google wasn't
no.
around in
No.
1979.
No.
Oh,
So that was clearly
But it just
updated.
made me
Oh,
laugh because it was like, this is obvious an updated version.
yeah.
That
yeah.
was the most
Yeah.
obvious of all,
Oh,
you know.
what did he say? Oh, I wish I'd written it down because I do remember that line. I'll try and find
I
it and
think
I'll
he
send
said
you.
typewriter. Was it typewriter or something like
Something,
that?
yeah, it was something really like, yeah.
Never changed
Oh,
it to Google, which is, didn't exist in 1979.
No.
So
yeah.
it
Oh,
just
wow.
made me smile when I read that. And I thought, I've got to note that down because that's hysterical.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is so funny. Larissa said, must be when we was talking earlier, exactly, April, womanhood isn't a monolith.
Yeah.
Hope I've said that right. So feminism can't be either. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Larissa said Lois Duncan was without question a pioneer for YA fiction. So glad the love is spreading. Honestly, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm in awe of her, like since reading
I'm
her
going
books.
Yeah.
to get them all. I can't wait
Yeah,
to collect them all.
definitely.
Yeah.
Mm.
Matthew said this would have been written when the push for the Equal Rights Amendment was really heating up. I think they started trying to pass it in 1978, so it was very timely. Oh, wow. And Matthew said that the ERA still hasn't passed. Oh, sorry, the ERA still
Yeah.
hasn't passed as of 2025.
No,
So it's still an important book to read and discuss today.
it is.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you guys, since you're in a different country, how things are for you versus like us in America in regards to women's rights. Like, I'm assuming it's kind of a similar thing.
I think I think it's similar. Obviously, the US is going through a lot right now, isn't it? So
Yeah.
obviously, I feel like the US is probably more unstable than the UK at the moment
Yeah.
on that side, but I feel like it's on a par still. A lot of the themes still very, very
Relevant.
relevant,
And
aren't
the
they?
Yeah.
What do
government
you?
is putting a request to get all period apps data
Uh,
so that they can
Oh.
yeah,
start
yeah,
miscarriages in this
yeah,
country. So
yeah. I
Oh.
read
we're
about that.
going down the same
Same
route. So
route as
Mm,
us.
different. We're just a little bit behind you,
yeah.
Yeah.
and because you've got that person in charge who is
Mm,
pushing that agenda,
yeah.
uh, and ours is just a bit slower. But yeah,
Mm. Yeah, that's what I mean. I feel like there's a bit of a ripple effect coming the UK's way, if that makes
that
Yeah.
sense. But
No.
return to very traditional values is
mm,
something that's kind of sweeping across the whole of
mm,
Europe as
Mm.
America. I think
yeah,
that's these things come in waves, and I think that's just
yeah,
the way it is.
yeah,
Some of
definitely.
my students, one of them did a dissertation and project on something she was calling the soft life,
Yeah.
and it's the fact that brands like Boohoo and a couple of others have started to use housewife type imagery in their advertising,
Oh,
and
Yeah,
they're
they have.
starting to show traditional depictions of being a woman that were perhaps used in advertising in the 50s and 60s, and these are starting to come back in.
mm,
And that
mm,
it was an interesting piece because she was like saying that the idea of having a soft life, as in being a stay-at-home wife or
mm,
being more domestic based than a career woman, that it's something which they're not supposed to be aspiring to, but actually some want to have that choice again.
mm,
Because before it's like, no, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. So we've got to go the other way of what women's roles should be,
mm,
and that
Mm-hmm.
some of them are going to go, actually I aspire to having an easier life, to being about my family,
Yeah.
and
yeah,
it's really interesting because the age group seems to be in a bit of turmoil of how they feel about that,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that
mm,
some of them love the imagery and think, yes, feminism is about choice, and so if that's what somebody wants to pursue or have as a part of their
mm,
life, then that should be allowed. But others are kind of going,
yeah,
we can't be rolling things back. We've had so much progression, and we can't just be showing women in our fashion campaign, doing the ironing and
mm,
stuff
Yeah.
like that. And we're reversing things in many ways. But it was just really interesting, like the topic
From
that we're talking
was
about,
Yeah,
and that
that's
this is like a
fascinating.
it's the
Yeah.
21-year-old
choice.
talking to me about it and kind of going, "Do you know about the soft life?" I'm like, "What's the soft life?"
Oh,
And
It's the
wow.
trad
and then
life, let's be honest,
Trad life, I was
trad
gonna
life.
say.
And
yeah,
it's just, but the day, feminism is all about choice.
Mm,
If you want to be a mother and a wife, and that you want to be in that environment,
Yeah.
then that's your choice. If you want to have a career and have a family, that's your choice. If you want to
mm,
have no children and be child free, that's your choice.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
about choice, and which is exactly what Narissa's put. That's what it is,
mm,
isn't it? But it is interesting
yeah,
in that imagery, which is very old fashioned to us.
yeah,
Isn't it?
Mhm.
yeah, definitely. Oh, it's just
Yeah.
fascinating as well.
In America, it's called trad life, isn't it? You're a trad wife.
Yeah,
So
Trad
yeah.
it's
life,
that's
yeah.
the same
yeah.
thing.
But that's
Teddy
interesting
put,
because that almost
oh,
fuels the power of people who want women to be put in their place,
yeah,
doesn't it? And I think for me, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm all about, whatever your choice is, great. But I can
mm,
understand the kind of like
mm,
seeing those images and going, oh, but it's gonna be misunderstood or misinterpreted or
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
misused by some people to go,
yeah,
that's a woman's place. And it's like, no, 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 we don't need
mm,
to go back down that road. It's
exactly.
taken long
yeah,
enough.
yeah.
It's always
So,
extremes. People always take extremes rather than
yeah,
actually realize
Yes.
that
Yeah.
it's
yeah,
in somewhere in the middle, isn't it?
yeah. And as you
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
it's a woman's
Choice.
choice,
Hmm.
not a woman's
Yeah.
place, definitely.
Yeah.
I saw Teddy put, she wrote the ending superbly. It left me cold in a good way. The 3 years later was a good way to give some closure, albeit not a happy ending for the characters, which made it more real.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Matthew said the epilogue was necessary because otherwise we would have always wondered if they got away with what they did.
Yeah.
There would have been no
Yeah.
closure.
I like that.
Yeah. Matthew said, I still don't know how they got away with the principal's office and the science lab destruction. Yeah.
Mm.
It was a very small town school. I mean, yeah, like, how did they get away with it? Just, yeah. That was kind of glossed over a little bit. We didn't
Yeah.
really get any kind of
Mhm.
Oh,
closure
there's
on that.
only this club that was in down the corridor.
And it could
Who could have done
Well,
it?
have
doesn't that tell you
them
something?
girls have done the pig shit everywhere. That's not them. So it must be somebody's broken in. That's what's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It won't be the
Oh,
one group
dear.
that are unknown to be on campus just down the corridor.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Claire's put, my daughter hit me over the head with a skillet once. Wow. It really
Yeah.
Oh my
hurts.
Yeah.
She was
God.
waving it around whilst meant to be drying it and yapping at me. Unfortunately, she talks with a lot of hand gestures. That's like something I would
There
do.
was no
I'm like,
force behind it. That's something. No force behind it. That's why you kill you.
oh dear. Um, Heather said I brought a copy of Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. The updated version references Facebook.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Larissa said humanity never learns and it's forever circular. Yeah. Circular,
Yeah.
cycler. The important point is informed choice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Hmm.
Heather said trad wife is similar. It sounds similar to soft life. Yeah, we call. Matthew said we call the trad. Is it trad wife? Am I
Trad
saying that right? Yeah,
wife.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like
Here in the UK.
traditional. It's just
Yeah, yeah.
important.
And they said though trad wife is very specific to this idea that everyone was middle class when most women have always worked. Yeah, that's
and
so true.
people can't afford to live on one wage. So
Yeah,
it is a kind of, you know, not many people can do it because not many people can afford
yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Most
No, definitely.
do wages coming in, don't they?
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. So one last really quick question. I know we've gone really over time, but it's just been so
Yeah,
fascinating
on you
discussing this book and
play.
yeah. So do you feel that Daughters of Eve is a celebration of female self-determination or a cautionary tale? April? Or
Um,
neither?
that's tough. That's tough. Maybe neither. Well, I think that the support that the girls had of for each other was really beautiful and was a
Mm,
really wonderful part of the book. And I thought that that
yeah.
was something, the biggest takeaway, because
Mm.
once the violence and the extremism started to ramp up, it was like some of those friendships were broken. And I
Mm,
think that that was like the core message of like, women should be supporting other women
yeah.
no matter like their choices and everything. Like we should just be supporting one another. And yeah, I think that
Mm,
it was there was a little bit of that. There was a little bit of a celebration, and then not
yeah.
so much.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. How about you, Kelly? Do you think it's celebration of female determination, cautionary tale, both, neither?
It's definitely more the first. It
Mm,
ended up being going towards the
yeah,
cautionary.
just
Um,
kind of went, whoo.
yeah, and I think it could be cautionary seen as a negative thing and undermining the what feminism is trying to do, or
Mm,
it could be seen as it's cautionary that any extreme view is
yeah,
extreme, and that you doesn't
yeah,
have to go to extremes. So it could have almost gone, inspiring caution, but be inspired to go.
yeah,
You don't have to be one view, one way. Oh, that's,
mm,
there's no grey areas.
yeah,
You could still have
Hmm.
those ideals, and that, with these women, they all chose something different for their lives. It doesn't say
mm,
anything about whether they were happy, but it
no,
shows that they all made different choices, and they were in the
yeah,
same time period and made different choices. So I think it
mm,
ended up being on the inspiring and celebrating.
yeah,
There wasn't any judgment in that summary. It wasn't kind of
yeah,
going,
Yeah.
oh
As a
well,
statement.
after this,
Yeah.
yeah,
it's just like this.
yeah.
This is it's a matter of fact. This is who
Yeah,
they are, and
matter of
this is why
fact,
they
this
are.
is what
Yeah.
happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Sharon? What do you
I
think?
think it was both. I think it's complex, really. I think it starts as kind of, um,
Mm,
being a wonderful thing with as April said, about female friendship, empowerment.
mm,
I think because of one person, it becomes a cautionary
yeah.
tale. But
Yeah.
I think it's inspirational as well. So I think it's a
Mm,
very it's very nuanced, isn't it? I think it's
Yeah.
yeah.
all of those things, really. And,
Yeah.
but it's a completely female book.
Yeah.
I think it really gives a voice to women. Some of those
Mm.
voices aren't particularly the best ones you want to hear, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
kind of a view of a lot of female voices, and that's lovely to
Mm,
read.
Mm.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think it was both,
Yeah.
really.
And I totally get why you said at the beginning, like, I can't decide whether I
Yeah,
liked it or I didn't, or because you do feel a little bit like that at the end. Um, I will admit, I can't decide, did I like it? I flew through it. I think I liked it, but I think it was more, I was just so in awe of how she wrote it and the themes that she covered and things. I was just fascinated by that. So, but I am with you. I'm like, I really liked it, but I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I can't make up
it's
my
an
mind myself.
emotionally empowering book, I think,
Yeah,
because it makes you feel sad, it makes you feel enraged,
yeah,
feel angry, it makes you feel heartbroken, it makes
yeah,
you feel it's emotional.
Mm.
It's an emotional
yeah,
book,
Yes.
and like any
Yes.
book you read that evokes emotion, that leaves you at
mm,
the end with a kind of feeling, well, but did I actually like
yeah.
it,
Just
or did it
like,
just make me feel
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. That's so true. It just that is the question. It's like it made me have so many
Yeah.
feelings, like anger, like emotional,
Mm.
like, and it was
Hmm.
just like, and that's the power of a good book, right?
Yes.
Makes you think,
A
and
great choice, well done,
yeah,
April. Brilliant.
well done,
Thank
April. It
you
was
guys.
brilliant. And this is
Oh,
April's first live chat as well. So yeah, so
Just as well, it
yay.
went well.
You guys make me feel so comfortable.
oh,
Thank you so
oh
much.
no, honestly.
I'm such a
um
shy person, so
oh
thank you.
no, you've done absolutely, honestly. I was so excited to chat to you finally as well.
Yeah, me too.
I saw that Narissa just said probably both in regards to the answer because it's a complex
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Matthew said, I think it presents both sides of the coin. Narissa said, we can only ever see things through our own
Mm.
experience. So I guess it's about
Yeah.
looking beyond that. Oh,
Yeah,
so
that's a
true.
beautiful comment. That's so
Yeah,
true.
so true.
It's also
So
really
true.
a lot about the cycle of violence. And I remember Fran in the book said, violence begets violence. And
Mm,
also, Jane's mom was talking about how, the dad, well, he had violence, he was abused in his past. So it's so many repetitions of these violence cycles. And,
mm,
you know, needing to break that.
Yeah.
Needing to be the person that stops and says no more.
Yeah.
Generational trauma, isn't it? Comes through it very much.
Yeah.
So I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Claire said, I think it was a balanced view of the complexities of people. There were some fantastic male characters and some less appealing female ones. We are all products of our environment to some extent. So true. Yeah, and at the end, and Lucy said at the end of the day, if an American school banned it, because it did get banned, I meant to touch upon that, which I forgot about, but it did get banned. I think it got banned on the re-release in the 90s for some random reason, and then again in the 2000s, which I just find fascinating in itself. Yeah, as to like why it was banned. I wrote some of the reasons down, funny enough. Like in 1997, it was removed. It just says removed with 16 other titles. 2000, it was removed because for violence, risky behaviour, and seeks to prejudice young, vulnerable minds on several issues. In 2005, they removed it for profanity and sexual content.
There's sex in this.
Yeah.
It's intimated, but it doesn't go into explicit at all.
And then 2007, I've got written down, it was removed the book from elementary schools after rumours of parents' displeasure of having a formal review which found issues with language, suggestive material. But apparently Duncan did agree it probably was not for elementary schools. Yeah.
It's YA, isn't it?
Yeah. So
in elementary school, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's fair with the elementary school, definitely. Yeah. But yeah, no one should ban any books at all. We should just be able to read what we want to read.
Ban books, they're the ones you need to read.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, but thanks, guys. I know we've gone like way over, honestly, but this has been it's been so fascinating, and like I just knew we'd have so much to talk about, and like a lot of the time I've like lost my way on my notes and stuff because I've just been so fascinated by what you've been saying, and everyone in the comments. Bring on the next one. Oh yeah. So we definitely will do another Lois Duncan. Maybe we'll do Summer of Fear then, if that's like a witchcrafty one. We'll definitely do that. And and thank you for joining us. And April, thank you, as we said, for suggesting it and joining us.
Thank you for jumping in, Kelly.
Yeah, and thank you for jumping in. That's what I was just going to say. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you for bearing with me while I was getting the names muddled.
I thought you did brilliantly, darling.
We was all getting the names muddled. This was my little writing. I had to write them all down. I was sitting here before the chat and I was like, can I remember them? No. Let's frantically write them down.
Thank you, everybody in the chat. Your comments.
Yeah, your comments. Absolutely fantastic. And I definitely will think about this book a lot, and I think it will stay with me for a while. Just fascinating.
So of the original, because I'd quite like to read that.
Yeah. I think I'll send you the link, Sharon. I think I did just see one pop up on eBay, which I think is like this copy. So I'll send you the link.
People who don't want to keep it or read it again might be on vintage and what have you.
Yeah, that's it. But I'm definitely intrigued to read the updated version at some point as well, just like to experience that as well. So
face, I think, from what I've said, I think it's just more in your face.
Yeah,
much more obvious violence in that one.
Yeah. But thanks, guys. I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your day or your evening, and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks, guys. Bye. Bye.